Hey everyone, Yoiston here, and I hope you all are doing well wherever you are in Middle-earth. I'm joined once more by Royen, and we just got done filming the first episode review of Season 1 of Rings of Power. Welcome to Episode 2's review of Rings of Power. Royen, thanks again for being here and for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Before we get any farther, just remember, this is not a spoiler-free review.
Thank you. Thank you. I gotta go back and edit that into the first.
There's also, there were a lot of, like, not caveats, but declarations at the start of the first one. All those probably still hold. So
yeah,
but we're not going to state them all.
Yeah. I don't even remember them all, but yep. So hopefully you guys have all watched, or at least don't care about spoilers and all that. At least have watched our episode 1 review to kind of know how this is going to work. So first, I don't think we have many introductions, so I'll hand it over to Royen first. Royen, what's your opinion on episode 2?
Episode 2 I thought was better than episode 1. Episode 1 I found to be quite boring. Episode 2 was, again, I think that's kind of the major, as far as just product of entertainment. So far the show has been more or less boring with with like little sparks of life in specific moments. But I thought that episode 2 was better about this, or at least there's more interesting things to think about in between the more interesting scenes. I guess from a rating perspective, I guess maybe a 7 out of 10. Like I said last episode, a 5 for me is middle of the road average. I still think that this is a better than average show, but most of that is coming from the visual prowess that I'm seeing. I think that this is an absolutely beautiful show. And in episode 2 specifically, I don't know if it's actually just lighting or if they're real, but I feel like I'm actually getting the real practical landscape shots that I just so uberly desire.
Yeah.
But, sitting here and I'm thinking about the storylines, for me, Arondir's storyline was the most interesting. Arondir and then Bronwyn as well, because they kind of split those two into two. And I think both are they both have merits so far. The Harfoots, I felt like the storyline kind of stagnated a lot in this episode somewhat. For last time we got the introduction. I'm learning about these characters. I'm charmed by them and I'm enjoying their introduction. In episode 2, it's basically just Nori like trying to deal with Meteor Man, or the Stranger, which is his real term so far. Galadriel, Olympic swimmer, absolute champion. This is the part that makes the least amount of sense to me. We talked about how her jumping off a ship is either an act of suicide or bad writing. And it leaned towards bad writing, because then she immediately just starts front crawl, baby, in a direction. She did not take a moment to measure which way she was going. She just started swimming. And I was like, I guess she probably has an inner compass to be like, all right, that way is east. I need to go that way. But at what point I want to ask your opinion about this.
Yeah, for sure.
So as you set sail from the west coast of Middle-earth, you get in your ship, how many days of travel do you need to get to the point where you can maybe potentially feel the touch of Valinor?
It's a great question, but we have when we look at the map of Middle-earth, like we have this whole sea area that's just there and not filled in. We have a couple islands, things like that. So it's past all those. And then, since it's the Second Age, we also have another marker, which is nice, which is Numenor. So it's all the way past those. And it would probably be a couple months of a voyage, I would imagine. That's what I mean. Like probably a Hawaii to California sort of estimate might not be far off.
Crazy long.
Probably. Yeah, I mean, like, because Tar Aldarion, and I could be totally wrong about this. I'm not super great with, like, geography and, like, measuring that sort of stuff. But, Tar Aldarion, the Mariner, he would leave, and this caused a problem in Numenor. He would just leave for, like, months at a time. and just sail all the way to Middle Earth. And I imagine that took months to sail back and forth. But yeah, it's crazy long.
So not only is Galadriel just intent that she's going to swim back,
Yeah.
but also there's just another random ship out there.
Yep.
What are they doing? These aren't elves.
No explanation.
They're
nothing.
so far from Numenor. we don't get an opportunity to get any backstory on them because they're immediately eaten by a Leviathan. And I'll say, love the Leviathan. Huge fan of beasts in Middle Earth. The CGI not as much, but just the idea of a concept of there being a creature in water that's not the Watcher in the water.
Mm-hmm.
I was a fan. But I just this whole premise, this all feels like an elaborate way to try to, as from a writing perspective, get Galadriel from her elven kin to end up on Numenor, which has yet to be name dropped in the show. Nobody has said the word Numenor yet.
Really interesting. Sure. Yeah,
I didn't take notes, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's obviously the plan, because that's what happens at the end of her part of this episode. Is she's picked up by an obviously Numenorian ship who with somebody standing in the sunlight so you can't see him. I imagine that's going to be a character that will matter a lot. But if that was the goal, why have her go all the way before turning around and jumping off? Why not just have her refuse the call like she did in the book?
Well, and it's interesting too, because even in the late first age, beginning of the second age, they didn't allow her to come back. The Valar were like, "Nah, you stay."
Yeah, no, she's like, "You can't come back," and she's like, "I wasn't even thinking about it."
Yeah, I didn't even want to come back, Mom. Yeah,
why didn't we have something like that? Why didn't we have something where Gil-galad could be like, "Hey, get out of here," and she's like, "I'm not going west," and he's like, "Well, then leave," and so then she does. And then we have a different storyline where she can end up on the deck of a Numenorian ship. Like, that's not hard to write. That's not.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
This one is both hard to write because they had to add in this entire other scene with this sea creature that they had to spend a lot of money to animate, and they had to do all of this, and it still doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. Anyways, the more I talk about Galadriel, the worse my mood gets. So let's move on. I talked about the Harfoots, I talked about Arondir, and I talked about Galadriel. That leaves just one more storyline, which is brand new to this episode and also my favorite, and that's Elrond and the dwarves. This was, for me, the highlight of the episode. Also, there's a scene with Elrond and Celebrimbor, which just I know both me and Yoiston loved.
Fire is so good.
It's a lot of character dynamics. We get to see into Celebrimbor's eye. We get to see through him. We get to see what his desires are, what he wants, and we get to see that kind of pride that, spoiler alert for the Silmarillion, will lead to his downfall. And we see all of that in this scene. It's so well done. It's well written. It's well acted. It was definitely one of, if not the best scene so far of the show. I think Yoiston probably thinks it's the best. I would put it second best. And then we get to see Elrond be like a real character, because last episode he was just a weird appendage to Galadriel that didn't make a lot of sense, not only in lore but also in from a narrative standpoint. What's his duty here is to be a friend to this person who she's not friendly to him in the first episode at all. But now we get to see him actually be a character, and I like this kind of politician, but less so, more like an ambassador Elrond kind of characterization. And he goes into Khazad-dûm, and we get to see Khazad-dûm, and it's beautiful. It's all CGI, of course, but it's so well designed, in my opinion, that I forgave it immediately. It was gorgeous. We got to see some of the things that I have always I've been through Latro's Moria 7 times now. I'm seeing the mirrors, and I get to see them in action. It's like, that's so cool. How that is. It's just such a cool place, and it's well done. And then they have this game of endurance, which I really thought it was going to be a drinking game when they walked in. There was just two random, like, there were two cups on two stools,
Yeah.
and I was like, "This is the Two Towers again. We're going to do
Oh.
this again, aren't we?" But they didn't. They did something different, and that surprised me in a somewhat pleasant way. It was definitely what I think that the endurance scene was like the weakest of the dwarven storyline of this episode, but I still found it better than most of Galadriel's episode or most of Nori's.
Yeah.
And I knew from the moment that Durin was like, I need you to get out of here because you weren't at my wedding. I thought that felt weird, but then but it didn't feel out of place because they immediately followed up with one of the major themes, which I like so far about the show, is like the separation of elves for everybody else, the separation of the firstborn from the mortals, and how, you know, that actually
that whole like blink of the eye, 20 years kind of thing. Yeah,
that was good. That concept makes a lot of sense in the Legendarium, and it's a huge theme, and especially in between the friendships of like Gimli and Legolas in the Legendarium. That's part of what people have to overcome in order to have these cross-race friendships and relationships, is that they have to remember that the elves, it's not just that they live forever and they watch everybody die. Like, that's overdone. That's in fiction everywhere. But the elves, they also, everything is stagnant in their lives. They are stationary. They do not change. They do not adapt. And that's a part of Arondir's discussion with his Watchwarden in episode 1. That's a part of Gil-galad's whole issue. Yeah. It's like, that's a major theme. And I really like the conversation on the lift between those two characters. I love the dinner scene. I did see something. We can talk more about this in dialogue because I know you're itching to get to your part. But yeah, I thought that this was my favorite part of the show so far, was Elrond and Durin talking. And yeah, it saved the episode for me for sure, because a lot of the other things that you'll get to touch on, not as much, but so I guess I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, sounds good. So yeah, it was a little higher than last episode for you. For me, it was overall a little bit lower than last episode. I would put this one at like a 4 or 5 out of 10. With, again, a lot of the visuals and stuff, and the Elrond Celebrimbor Durin arc being the thing that doesn't make it like a 1 or a 2 for me, I think. John Howe's visuals are just incredible. He is one of the best artists out there, and there are a lot of Tolkienian artists. But I also thought Khazad-dûm was beautiful. But I wish that they had gone more with more miniatures over time. This isn't just against Rings of Power. I think this is about the industry at large. Like, I wish they had invested more time and energy into like adapting miniatures to continue forth to be usable, because like that's why Star Wars holds up rather well. That's why Lord of the Rings holds up rather well. It's like, I don't know. I wish that was a technology that was just as prevalent as CGI still, but anyway, so the good was that I thought that I have written here, the dwarves are awesome, great music in Khazad-dûm. They said Aule, which I did not expect. And Durin's kids, this confused me. This excited me, but like they ran down with these like huge helmets or whatever on their head, like they were just in these things. And one was it looked like the dragon helm of Dorloman, the dragon helm of Turin Turambar. And it like looked like a dragon helm because it had like the dragon over the top, and I'm like, what?
That could be just a reference. That could just be,
for sure. I thought that was cool, but I'm like, I don't know what you guys have the rights to, and I don't, whatever. To be fair, like the dragon helm wasn't the only helmet that looked like that. There were also a bunch of dwarven masks that looked like that they're using in the show, which I think are awesome. The design of the dwarves, are really good. I like the masks and stuff that they use. Again, the Celebrimbor Elrond conversation. Honestly, if this whole episode had just been them just talking, like grabbing some wine and just talking, like I would probably give it a higher score than what I gave it. Because even though it's a little different how they talked about Feanor and everything, I'm like, that was such a cool character moment. Like, shows for me have some measure of rewatchability, like the really good ones, and this is definitely one of the only scenes, if not the only scene so far, except for the War of Wrath one in the beginning of the first episode, maybe the dinner with Durin here, where I could like rewatch this on YouTube like every once in a while and be like, that's a cool conversation.
It's like when you're watching Game of Thrones clips on YouTube. Yeah,
exactly. The early Game of Thrones. I do wonder what the dwarves have at the very end of the episode in that chest, and I swear if it's a Silmaril,
it's going to be a Silmaril, or it's going to be what they think is a Silmaril. That's my prediction for it. And of course, like when I was talking about earlier, like, hey, it felt weird that he's like, oh, you have to leave because you didn't come to my wedding. It's like it's because they were hiding this thing for most of it, and
if it's a Silmaril, like, they missed the whole point of the Silmarillion. Anyway, yeah, it could be the Nauglamir. I have no idea, but it could just even be the Arkenstone.
The Nauglamir would make sense. I think the Nauglamir would be the safest choice for them.
Yeah.
I would like that. I think that they could do good things with that storyline. But if they just make it a Silmarillion, or a Silmaril, it's going to be disappointing for me.
Yeah, for sure. But so anyway, that's probably the good stuff. Arondir, he has some Tolkienian courage moments, but even he falls into some tropes, and I'm like, well, okay, well that he kind of went downhill for me in this episode a little bit, his storyline. So overall, though, now to get more into the poor stuff. Here comes my heart rate again, but Galadriel is a triathlete. Like, I swear, she's just like, sweet, this is my swimming session. Like,
she's going to the Olympics. She's going for endurance swimming. Like,
and if she made it back to Linden in like 2 years when she finally got there, like, that'd be impressive.
She's like those crazy people that like try to swim the English Channel. Like,
yeah, I'm gonna swim the Pacific. I think that's I think I could do it. It's gonna be easy. Anyway, so that's dumb. The whole the shipwreck thing. Again, part of me is always thinking about, you can have monsters in the water, and certainly probably Melkor did or whatever, but we always have to remember that there are Valar and gods present in this world. So if Galadriel's about to drown in the ocean, is Olmo just sitting there like, dang, sucks. Like watching her go by like on that rope thing. It's just like, shoot. If only somebody could save you. All right, I'm going to go chill over here. I don't know. Like, there are gods present in this world, especially if they're referencing the First Age and stuff, but whatever. That's not even
that like gods not acting is kind of like a huge point of the story, though.
Not with Olmo. Okay. Not really with him, because he interacted a lot he cared about those guys a lot in the First Age, It's like tours on the seashore and almost like, time to introduce myself. But I don't know. Again, it is Second Age. Like, they are more removed now, but I don't know. It's just characters being in dangerous situations for almost no reason. I don't know why those guys were just sailing in the middle of the ocean on a destroyed ship.
I think that this whole... And it's over already. 2 episodes and this leg of her story is gone.
Yeah.
But
already.
It feels pointless. It feels inserted where it doesn't need to be. And it's just every scene that she's in feels awkward. And I don't think it's Morfydd Clark, the actor's problem.
Yeah, I think she's great. It's the writing. I think some of the directing.
The directing is really, really, really weird, because even on this raft, I get they're on a raft, but like everybody is moving around like they are an animatronic at Disneyland. Like, what is going on?
That's fair. And like, we know Halbrand from the trailer that he isn't from Numenor, because he says Halbrand in like, one of the trailers introducing himself. So I'm like, okay, he's not from Numenor. Where were you guys? Where were you coming from? And they said like the far south. So I'm like, maybe Galadriel did swim like at least 800 miles already. Maybe she did, but whatever. Again, there are just so many issues. But even though I've been like ranting about this particular storyline, again, the Elrond Celebrimbor dwarf stuff, pretty good overall. From like, honestly, very good moments for sure. This one was bad, but my least favorite wasn't even this one of this episode. It was the Wanderer Harfoot stuff. At one point, like, those 2 Harfoots were like helping him up the little hill, and he kept like dragging back down, and he almost like summoned a force, like he almost like force pushed her, and I don't know what is happening. I wrote that Wanderer, what period happening, period Harfoots, period. I have that in my notes. It's like I could almost skip.
Wanderer, do you mean the stranger?
Oh yeah, sorry, the stranger. Okay. Yeah.
We can just call him Meteor Man.
Yeah, Meteor Man. What is happening? And he's already shown more magic than like Gandalf has in like the whole series, pretty much, like more just on the surface sort of magic and
hard magic.
Hard magic. And I don't know if he is Gandalf. If the show does that, again, it's not outside the realm of the possibility for the show to be like, this is Gandalf. He met the hobbits this way. I would lose it. But
I don't. A lot of his power is so dark. It feels like
it could also be Sauron for sure, because
it feels like fell sorcery. You know, he kills all the lightning bugs at the end because he used them for his sorcery. Like that doesn't feel like a good Maya kind of magic. Again, the hard magic always peeves me when it's done weird. I didn't actually hate the idea of magic being used the way it was and the cost that it took. I just it felt so off-putting.
It is really off-putting. And like, it's not, Middle-earth has, when you see magic in Middle-earth, it's often associated with some sort of spiritual power, more so than, hey, I can cast a fireball.
Typically with nature.
Yeah, typically with nature too. Yeah, great point. So that whole storyline, I almost could skip that whole thing. I was checking my phone. I was writing notes. I didn't really care that much. I'll be entirely honest. Like, I was bored. And this storyline just did not grip me. I don't... And I'm just frustrated with it for sure, because it just feels pretty generic. This guy's like finding the stars or something. He fell from the star. I'm like, what?
I have absolutely no idea what Maury was talking about. Like, this is how I can help him. I was like, what did you just say?
Yeah, she's already way more advanced than Bilbo if she knows how to build Vingalot, the ship of Eärendil, and help him back into the sky. Like, I don't know what she's talking about. Whatever. And like that, I'm becoming both just frustrated with the show and apathetic about parts of the show, and this is one of my apathetic storylines. Again, I'll reemphasize, I'm not gatekeeping. If anyone out there who's watching this, I'm sorry that I'm being so harsh on it for sure. But if you guys liked it, I'm here to say that is awesome, and that is, I'm happy that you're enjoying it. I honestly wish I was in some ways that it was closer to the lore for me to like, and it was a better story for me to like, but I'm absolutely not trying to invalidate that or invalidate your opinions for sure. This is just my frustration, absolutely. And I'm going to try not to hate watch going forward, as I mentioned in the last review. But to kind of wrap up my section here, Arondir, that section fell for me a little bit because while that orc fight thing at the end was kind of scary, it got kind of generic and really awkward. It was really awkwardly choreographed.
I think it was intentionally awkward because you don't have any warriors fighting this orc.
Dude, that kid should be absolutely KO'd. He should be gone.
He should be dead. I'm just so curious, like, how long does it take this orc to tunnel? Because if he's, from the kid's point in episode 1 where he's complaining about the rats or the mice.
Yeah.
Clearly this thing's been digging under his house for the last couple days, at least, right?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
So it takes him a couple days to get the length of the house. How long have they not heard from anybody in that village? A day away. How long have they all been gone?
Well, we can't tell time. We can't tell distance in this show.
No, but you did actually, you had one of those like traveling things. Not really. It was kind of just right at the end where they're walking up a hill. And that was still technically last episode though. No, I thought.
Now that I've ranted, is this one worse for you? You think?
No, I don't think it's worse. I still
Good.
really like the high points. I think that the difference between you and me, Yoisen, is that you are greatly valuing the opening to last episode, and for me, it felt rushed and awkward. I liked it, but I didn't love it. Whereas this episode had things that I loved, but there's definitely a lot of things kind of falling apart at the seams here.
I think for me, the Meteor Man is the thing that makes this episode worse than the last. I think if the Meteor Man wasn't as long of a part of this episode, because you text me before, you were like
half the Meteor Man scenes.
Yeah, you text me, you're like, this episode's 65 minutes. I'm like, dude, it feels like 3 hours, and that's what Meteor Man is the reason why. I feel like, so if we got less of those things, if that felt less out of nowhere. It feels like a needless plot line, to be entirely honest.
So right now it does, because I have no idea where it's going. I would imagine that plot line is going to be the main thing that ties all of this world together, because right now we've got literally got characters across the entire world. We've got characters in Khazad-dûm, Meridian, Rovanian, Mordor, or Proto-Mordor.
Proto-Mordor, Linden, the middle of the ocean.
The middle of the ocean, and soon to be Numenor.
Numenor.
I do think that, because it was in the last episode where you have the shot of everybody looking at the meteor that's straight out of The Land Before Time from the 90s. That's been done. Come on, guys. But also, I just remembered, there's literally the shadow of an ant watching the meteor fall, and that's
that was sick.
all
that was
we've
awesome.
seen of nature, really, of natural focus.
Oh yeah.
We have
100%.
characters walking through nature, but other than that, we don't have characters enjoying nature.
It's
such a huge part of Tolkien's.
They've got to go from point A to point B,
universe.
Royen. They got to just go. They can't enjoy Middle Earth. We're not here to enjoy it. No, that's what it feels like. I'm here to try to enjoy it, but they're just rushing past it all. And then the things that they give us are they feel contrived. They feel generic. They feel archetypal. And I think for me, what these 2 episodes, I try to reflect and try to become a better person and in whatever I do. And I think what these 2 episodes have taught me about myself is that in prior trailer reviews and things, I've said as long as they're faithful to the themes of Tolkien and so forth, even if they make up some of their own stories, I'll be fine with that as long as it's kind of good and sticks with the themes of Tolkien. This one, I think it actually has strayed from the themes of Tolkien, but I think I've learned about myself that I do care more about it being closer to the works that Tolkien wrote than I thought I cared about, I guess, because I've tried to read a lot of different opinions and reactions regarding these 2 episodes so far, and it feels very split. I forgot to mention this on my in the last episode, but I even asked you all on Twitter what you guys thought of the first episode. I imagine it kind of carries over to the second here as well, but 18.7% said very bad. 19.1% said pretty bad, some good. That's what I would have said. 36% said some good and a bit of bad, and then 26.2% said very good. So it was 60 to 20% pretty much was the good to bad ratio. And so I've seen a lot of people enjoy this. And again, that's awesome, but I guess I try to ask myself why I don't as much. And I think it's because you have these incredible, almost romantic stories of nature and friendship and fellowship and wars and things like that throughout all of Tolkien's Legendarium. Even if in the Second Age they are rather blurry focus in terms of it's not in a POV, it's not in a structured narrative like the Lord of the Rings. It's very much 1,000 miles out, and we're looking at the stories that happen throughout the Second Age. But to me, you can still feel a lot of the heart. You can still feel when there is dialogue, which again is rare in Unfinished Tales or Silmarillion. When there is dialogue, you feel it. You feel how much care and effort was put into this. So then when I see them scoop out the shells of Galadriel and scoop out the shells of Elrond and put in their own characters, and I'm like, guys, why didn't you just make up your own Amazon fantasy show? Why didn't you guys write your own thing? Why did you have to take Middle Earth? And if you guys were so excited about these storylines and these characters and stuff, you probably could have gotten away with making your own entire storyline and world. Why didn't you do that? Oh, because money. That's why. Because you want the branding and you want to tell your story, not Tolkien's story, but you want to use his characters and kind of their carcasses almost, because you're kind of killing them, and use them in your own as drones in your own story. And it drives me kind of wild. And I'm just frustrated. It just upsets me for sure when it comes to that sort of stuff. But I definitely saw a lot of that in this episode. It didn't feel like Middle Earth. These guys could seriously be put in 2022 in a lot of the ways that they speak, or in a lot of ways that they act or pick on each other, these characters. And I'm like, yeah, this isn't Tolkien. It's hardly close. It's very much a fan fiction set in his world, written by a modern writer, because I can feel all the modern stuff. When they were looking for that black sword in episode 1, Royen, and they pulled it out of the underneath the house, my dad was like, they better not pull out a pistol, because I'm like, it would make sense. Yeah, I mean, they pull out like a Glock. It's like, oh, this is 2022. This isn't Middle Earth. Gotcha. Um, it's annoying. It's frustrating. I gave this show a lot of breathing room when we were talking about all the trailers, and I said, I'm going to reserve judgment. I'm cautiously optimistic. Reserve judgment until it comes out. Now that these 2 episodes have come out, I can, I see what they've done, and I'm not the biggest fan, but sorry, I totally just derailed the conversation we were having. My bad.
I think it's good to talk about what our true feelings are, and so that we can be honest with ourselves and ask questions like, what, if anything, are you actually looking forward to in episodes coming?
Yeah, and that's a great question. What would you say you're looking forward to?
So as far as just like the base story, I'll talk about themes next, but the base story, I am looking forward to the learning more about what the dwarves have, and then how that relationship builds with Celebrimbor and the elves of Eregion, or if that relationship builds or deteriorates or anything like that. What I don't want is those to dissolve into 2 different storylines that are just operating next to each other, which is what I fear will happen. Because I mean, aside from that, I don't know what Arondir's storyline is. So I guess because I like how that actor and how it feels weird, because it feels like with these 4 storylines, it feels like there's a different director for each one.
It does.
Is that
it
just
really
me?
Does.
Because it's not, because it's the same director directed both the first 2 episodes. But it feels like there's a different director for all 3 of these, because Galadriel's shots and the acting and the direction feels so different from the Harfoots and their storyline. I'm not sure what the thing is, but I like how Arondir's, like, his story so far has been put together. I'm curious to see what Bronwyn is going to do. I will admit that I really, when I first saw the kid and he first called her mom, I was going to be like, oh my God, please, I don't want to just hate the child character, because I always hate the child character in all media I've ever watched. Yeah. Please don't do it. But already I'm like, this kid is the problem. Just carrying around a sword. Is that supposed to be
taking his blood?
That's weird that it's kind of drinking his blood, but whatever. But I kind of want to see where that's going. I was absolutely shocked that they split Arondir and Bronwyn up so quickly, because now I want to talk about the themes. I see each of these stories kind of having a different theme that they're going to be tackling. The Harfoot's super simple. It's just that the call to adventure and what that means. It's also the plot of The Hobbit. So
and we don't. I agree with Matt from Nerd of the Rings. It's like, this is not a necessary framing technique, because I think Elrond could, if any character could, like, be writing the events down of the tale if it were more connected or whatever. But I just don't know. It's like, why?
I think the frame narrative is not present in this show, and anybody who's looking for it is going to be disappointed. That's not what they're going to do. It feels too complicated for a modern TV show. It shouldn't be, but it feels like it is. Like, that's just how modern TV shows. That concept.
And it's like, I mean, we've spent so many movies and time. I love Hobbits, but they're not needed in this narrative, as Tolkien proved in the telling of this narrative. It's like, I want to be spending time with Númenóreans. Where's Vientur, the first Númenórean to sail back to Middle Earth? Where's Tar Aldarion? Where is Arendis? You guys are showing me that you have rights to Melkor destroying the 2 trees. Okay, show me Aldarion from the Unfinished Tales then, please. And it's like, you can't.
Even like the middlemen that live in Mordor, they are more, so far, they have a more interesting storyline than the Harfoots. Because the Harfoots, they just kind of feel like, hey man, we got to put hobbits in here, otherwise it's just any generic fantasy. But also, a lot of the storylines could fit into any generic fantasy so far.
My score went down to a 4 for this episode.
I'm still holding my 7, because there are themes in these stories that I'm interested in. So I just talked about the Harfoots. For Elrond and Durin's, specifically those 2, it's going to be about, like I mentioned in the last in my last kind of lecture or my monologue, how the differences between elves and their outlook on the world and how that changes and how they kind of watch all of Middle Earth pass them by, and that's why elves that's why they seem to have such a bad rap everywhere.
Yeah.
Arondir is also kind of going to have to deal with the same thing, or at least I thought he would when he was still with Bronwyn. They were going to try to build that relationship together. I imagine that they will meet back up again, but I'm curious to why they separated it. And I guess we're just going to have to see what Arondir can do, because Bronwyn basically gathered all the humans into one unit so that from a story making device they can go out and do something. So what's Arondir doing? He got captured by orcs, whatever.
Whatever that was.
Galadriel's theme is probably one of the easiest to just sum up as this is Moby Dick and she is Captain Ahab.
Ooh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's true.
And her white whale is Sauron. And
if that's him, we don't even know that. Well, the one she's hunting. Gotcha.
She's hunting Sauron. That's her character backstory. That's basically all of her characterization so far, is that I hunt Sauron and everybody else just wants me to just go and die or go and not die with trademark at the end. But but yeah, so that is it's been done before, but I don't. Yeah. I try not to hold that against literature today because everything's been done before.
For sure.
But there's some interesting things that could be done there that haven't been done yet so far, because we just seem to be continuing to reiterate the same point that she is both prideful and supposed to be stoic, but the stoic's not coming across, so she just feels.
She really is
she just feels lost. She feels like a lost character right now. And it's heartbreaking because so far I've been really impressed with Morfydd Clark as an actor.
Me too.
Or an actress. I've been really impressed with the way that she's carrying herself. Again, I love the way that her character is designed. I actually love a lot of the costuming across. Granted, the random humans, they just look like any other random humans.
Yeah, true. Presence. Everybody's a Breelander in this show, like with the humans.
Exactly. But I was pleasantly surprised to see that Arondir's outfitting not only was not just unique to him, but also to the other elves over there. But the fact that they're still elves, but they look different from the elves from the far west. I was worried that would be something that they're just like, oh yeah, they're all wearing the same armor, and it'd be like, come on, guys! Can we add a little bit more? Because elves are more diverse than a lot of the average viewer will understand, and that lends to that, and I'm appreciative of it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, some of those costumes and such are really good, but it's like
mostly
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, mostly I'm just disappointed with the generic storyline so far. The themes, I think the themes have legs, and I'm hopeful that the themes can carry. Or they can land. Sorry, they need to be carried. I think they
need to be. Yeah.
Well, that's just how you write. You carry your themes with your actions until they land. At least that's how I like to think about it. But
I'm definitely getting less hopeful about the themes as time goes on. It seems super archetypal, super tropey, and even we were talking about this a bit before we hit record. The way I noticed this in episode 2, the way people kind of spoke, the way characters spoke were very similar to each other, regardless of where they were or who they kind of were. They use a lot of euphemisms and alliterations. Sometimes it makes sense where it's like this rustic, the Harfoot, oh, this isn't as much as this, or you're they're using a lot of these comparisons that we've never heard of or whatever, just to kind of, I guess, add to the world or add to the, but so many characters have been talking like that. Durin saying, well, if you bark at the moon, it won't come down. And they're all talking like this. And I'm like, what is happening here? It's almost like in Boba Fett when they would do the same sort of thing.
It definitely, I hadn't considered that till I was actually just thinking about it, but it definitely feels like, as far as syntax and word structure and how people talk, there's two options. You have elite, which is reserved for elves.
Yeah,
and then
the high elves,
everybody else just talks your random villager in a Skyrim.
Yeah,
They all kind of sound the same. They all kind of talk the same, and they do use different like terms. Like the Harfoots, they say different things.
They do, but it's
than the
so
dwarves
similar.
but they sound similar to the
like you can
dwarves.
tell that the same writer wrote all of these things. I notice it not only in this, sometimes
which is
I
weird because
notice
this
it
writer's room, they had like 8 people in it. So I was and this is where these archetypal stories, I think this is just a product of the modern writer's room, where I personally disagree with it, but they have this idea now that if you put 6 great writers in a room, you'll get something that's 6 times better than one great writer sitting in a room and writing it. And I disagree so strongly.
That's literally quantity versus quality. Like that's literally what we're talking about. Yeah,
I think that's how we get these things. And I talked about it last episode. I think so far the show is pretty mid, or at least just pretty average, with some visual effects that make it just slightly above average. But that it's not, like you said, in order for it to be a great show, a good show, there has to be a will to rewatch, and there isn't yet. So
for sure. Yeah. And I mean, I definitely see why. I mean, I think I see the reason why Tom Shippey left, that Tolkien scholar who left the writing.
Did he ever say why he wanted to? Why he?
I am sure he's under an NDA, to be entirely honest, from Amazon. Like, I bet he can't say why. But the more that the show goes on, the more I'm like, oh, I don't think he agreed with the direction of this that much at all. But well, to kind of wrap things up in terms of what's different, everything is different. I just wrote that in the column. So I have my notes split into 2 columns, like the good/bad, and then the differences. The differences are like everything. I can't really think of one thing that's like the same, actually.
Except no storyline that actually appears or is alluded to in the second. I just think the closest thing is
it's the Celebrimbor Elrond conversation, I would say, probably. Yeah.
Even Celebrimbor's like plan, I'm going to build a big forge, is
a little different. Yeah.
It's not quite quite there.
Aragian's in this like huge lake, and I'm like,
I don't know what that was. It was cool looking. It was a beautiful looking city. I don't know if it was a lake or a river.
I said out loud, I was like, Numenor, and then it was Elragian. I'm like, that is very far inland. Why is there so much water?
I think it's supposed to be the river, but I don't know.
Well,
I would prefer to miniature for that too, because I can
already see the cracks.
Well, it's just when you have CGI, and it could just be because I'm watching on a computer monitor, or even if you're watching on a TV, if it's not 4K, anything that's CGI and you're doing a rotational pan shot, like it clips. It starts to clip.
It does.
And that's not good. That's not good. That's only going to get worse with time. So.
For sure. Yeah, even on my like 4K screen, it looked not great. It looked great, but it looked CGI is what I should say. Sorry.
Yeah. For anybody who's watching this, because now if you haven't really heard of me, I've appeared on some things. I'm Royen, and I'll be on all of these episode reviews. And if there's one thing, or there's like 2 things that you sum up my takes so far, it's I'm a little bit more forgiving on lore things. Yeah. And I'm just a CGI hater. Those are
and he likes landscape shots. There we go.
Landscape shots are my favorite, but they're gone now, as it would seem. Except there was one. There was one with Arondir and Bronwyn. It was technically last episode, but as they approached the village that died, that I forgot the name of.
It doesn't matter.
That was New Zealand, baby. I could see it. I could see the difference.
Yeah.
And I loved it. Yeah. And then it was gone.
Well, my friends, so that we'll start to wrap things up here. Royen, thanks again for joining me, man. I appreciate having you here.
I'm very, very happy to be here. And, I am looking forward to doing more of these videos with you. I'd like to think that I'm hopeful for the rest of the show, but I totally understand the
the rage,
the hope falling away, and the immense disappointment. It lands with me. I don't think anybody who dislikes the show is wrong. I don't think anybody who likes the show is wrong. The only thing I think is annoying is if you're going in and you're voting, you're going to IMDb and you're giving it a 10 or a 1 for literally no reason other than you think the stars should be higher or lower.
Yeah. Like, I don't really care about the political war, but the social, cultural stuff behind all this. Like, I just want I want to get away from all that, actually, but I can't with this show.
I mean, we didn't really talk a whole lot about the appearance of, like, the social stuff. We talked about a little bit about, like, how some of the things feel, for me, when you say things like the show feels like it's in 2022, that just, to me, it's not about, like, social justice. It's just that the storylines and the way that characters talk feels modern.
So modern. Yeah, these guys messing with each other. I'm like, are you in high school? Like, what?
If you watch Peter Jackson, none of it does. None of it feels like the early 2000s, which is when it was filmed.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels very like.
I think that's great.
Feels very much like Middle Earth, and I'm disappointed that this hasn't been the case so far with this show. But again,
we're not saying that you can't have characters that mess with each other. I mean, all the hobbits mess with each other throughout Fellowship of the Ring, but the way that they did it felt like a hobbit and not a teenage human boy from, like, the middle school down the road.
Yeah, honestly, like, it's just it just gets old. And again, I'll keep definitely watching the rest of the season, and we'll have reviews throughout the whole season, and I'm going to be as hopeful as I can moving forward, because I do that for my sake. I do that for the sake of these reviews, just to see if they can't impress me with some things. And I know that they will impress me with some things, because they already have. But I am disappointed. The show has not lived up to the hype that I guess it was trying to set for itself, being the most expensive show in the world and all that kind of stuff. And it's just kind of flopping. I watched Jeremy Johns' review of both of these episodes before this one as well, and he was kind of saying the same thing. It's boring, and it's like, he's a big Lord of the Rings fan. Like, he's one of the biggest movie reviewers on YouTube, and he has inspired me for years, absolutely. And like, Lord of the Rings is like one of, if not his favorite movie, I guess, if you're gonna combine them all. And he's even played Lord of the Rings online and all this kind of stuff, and it's like, he's even disappointed, and I think a lot of people are. So yeah, we'll see how it goes going forward, but I'm not super happy about it. And sorry, this review is getting long, so we'll wrap it up here. Thanks again, Royen, and thanks to our Valar tier patrons: Peter Sheppard, Jonathan Putnam, Mark Kralick, Blair Scouten, Merten, John Hume, Sam McBee, Matt Sibbach, Elizabeth Calvert, Maz Gibs, Rhys Jenkins, Adam Petrlik, Brandon Glidden, Molly Sullivan, Daniel Burns, Anthony Harmon, Dorwin Gray, Arthur, Merlin, DJ Vaught, and Dale Davis, our newest Valar tier patron. Thanks so much to all of our patrons and YouTube members. Thank you all so much for watching. And I'll see you all Sunday with a video on how I would do a show set in the Second Age. My friends, thank you all so much for joining me on this adventure. Until the next one.